Namaste, my name is Inge Patsch and welcome to the series of Social Business. Today with the question which problems can and can't be solved by social businesses. For answering this question, I would like to briefly introduce two different types of models which can be used to analyze this question. The first one is by Roger Hollingsworth, his idea of how to do institutional analysis when it comes to innovation and societal change. So he's suggesting to look at 5 different layers, which are from top down increasing their flexibility or from bottom up increasing their stability. So the first layer he's suggesting to look into are institutions such as norms, rules, conventions, habits and values, which in turn shape institutional arrangements and answer the question how strong is the market, the state, corporate hierarchies, networks, associations and communities in the context of this society we look into. And then these institutional arrangements and how is power distributed among them shapes how are institutional sectors looking like. So how does the system of education look like, the business system, the research system, maybe the religious system, which again shapes how do organizations look like, are they big, small, are they rather base democratic and so on. And then, of course, this influences the output and performance of such an organization. So this model can be very useful to actually analyze how is innovation and how is change happening in a society, but also it can help us later to answer the question, what can be the impact of social business? The second model I would like to briefly introduce to you, and I guess most of you are familiar with it, is the idea of nested sustainability. You all might know the ideas of the 3 E's, so environment, equity and economy, or the 3 P's, planet, people, profit. I like to call the 3 layers environment, society and economy, and I like the nested way of presenting it, saying the environment is the baseline of everything and there is a lot of processes going on, natural processes, and then society is part of this environment and we interact with environment with every decision which we make, and we are also environment, and society can only strive if nature is like doing well. And then there is economy, and economy is again in turn part of society, and economy can only strive if society is basically doing well. And I want to use this model to actually analyze in 3 steps the question how can we solve problems on the 3 different levels of sustainability, even though they're integrated. So the first question is how can social business contribute to solving problems which are based on the environmental level of our planet's processes. And I think the big chance in social businesses lies in being the first one to have regenerative business models and the first one to really test around with new innovations, with cradle-to-cradle products. I think small social businesses or startups have an easier time because many of them built their business model from the scratch, so they don't have a lock-in effect in terms of the machines, the technology they use, as well as they have the mindset to really try around. And there is one social business type, the social business type D, which is actually focusing on projects like this and is then saying, okay, they identify a certain sphere of environmental processes or challenges which are there with the current economy, and then they try to build a total new business model around this, indicated by the second white circle, and then of course they treat customers, employees and suppliers well in this regard. But not just this type T social business, where I have, by the way, made a separate video about it, but also in general, all types of social businesses as well as social responsible businesses should have a kind of awareness and responsibility towards environment in one of their 5 pillars, which every business model should cover. A very interesting concept, and I will discuss this more in the video on type D, is actually the idea of cradle to cradle. You can find plenty of material also on this in the internet, which is, in my opinion, what every social business and every social responsible business should strive for, to say, okay, how can we really be fully regenerative on this aspect by having all the biodegradable or all the renewable resources fully going back into the planet's biological cycles, and all the non-renewable resources being built and designed in a manner that they can 100% be refurbished. But let me come now to the second layer of sustainability, the societal level of sustainability, and asking the question, okay, how can social business contribute on solving social or problems which are in this sphere? And before answering the question, how can social business contribute, I would like to ask or briefly discuss with you saying what are actually social problems and what do smarter people have figured out about them before. So one very brief definition could be a social problem describes a range of conditions which are manifestations of social disorganization, and we consider that we don't like the way it is. So the American sociologist Robert K. Merton was actually summarizing and saying social problems are a discrepancy between social values, so the standards or the norms which we assume that's the way it should be, and social realities. So they are caused by social factors, for example, not by an earthquake or natural calamities. And there is normally, having a consensus about this social discrepancy is normally the exception and not the norm. So there is a lot of power, politics, negotiation going on and saying what actually is a social problem. Therefore, we can identify manifest as well as latent social problems depending on the social negotiation stage a problem is in. And we will face a lot of buyers' perception of a social problem in terms, is it recognized, is it not recognized? So if you, for example, think about this movement around schooling and about how there should be alternative school, I think there is a lot of discussion about, and there are many people who say the schools as we have them are great, or they serve their purpose, or they are fine as well, or other people who say no, we should totally eradicate school, we should have homeschooling only. Others said, okay, we need to have a different business model of schools. So I think this shows very clearly how there is a lot of dialogue going on. And then, but last but not least, very interesting, he also highlights saying social problems can only be a topic in societies which understands reality as something which can be shaped. So if you're from a very fatalistic background where you say, okay, anyway, God has given me already my path and there is nothing I can do about it, well, you might not question any social arrangements. So I also found this a very interesting observation. I would like to add also what the sociologist Blumer added on this and saying, okay, social problems are actually part of social constructivism. So the society defines what problems are, and there is actually no objective or scientific way of really defining a social problems. Of course, there are all the methods which social sciences uses, such as questionnaires or surveys, but in the end, all of them reflect what is people's perception, and there is like no objective thing which without interviewing this could be actually figured out. So what is a social problem is negotiated in the democratic discourse. And this brings me to the last slide on this question, which is a graphic which I found very insightful when I saw it first time, which Sheche has developed, saying initially there is simply a social fact, such as the fact that, I don't know, men have two women, no? And then there is a first recognition by someone figuring out, okay, that is actually a problem. So someone is dealing with this and saying, okay, I'm not satisfied with this because of. And then he or she tries to bring that to a public awareness. And then there are two possible pathways. Either these first actors, they fail and, well, no one is really caring about or joining their opinion that this is a problem, and it will fall back to simply be a social fact. Or mass media is actually picking up the topic and it will become a public recognition. So more and more people, a broader mass, maybe nowadays also social media, will understand that this is actually an issue. So I think that's what happened with Fridays for Future, the World Climate Movement, where social media has picked up the topic and now we have reached public recognition. And then in the next level, and I think that's where, for example, again, with Fridays for Future we are at the moment, either media loses interest, which at the moment, because of the ongoing Friday demonstrations, is not yet the case, or it managed to enter the political arena and then it becomes a governmental recognition, and it seems that, okay, government is at least acknowledging that there is something to be done. Again, here it can happen that even government acknowledges that there is a problem, they neglect the responsibility or feasibility And I think in the current corona crisis, we have very often heard the sentence, well, the main thing which changed now, policy has, or the politicians have actually lost the argument of saying, oh, it's not possible to stop the wheel, because we have seen we could stop the wheel for corona. So, but that is something which happened in the past, for example, on the climate topic. Or they decide on measures and saying, okay, we make new rules, we make new regulations, awareness campaigns, whichever measures, and therefore try to mitigate the situation. And again, this can be successful or unsuccessful. So I found this table very helpful to understand how social problems are actually part of a democratic process. And yeah, having said this, let us have a look at now how social business can solve social problems. So this is the next question. How can social business contribute solving social problems? So again, the chances of that social business contributes is very much dependent on the reason for the problem which is there. So I would have identified like 3 social business types which are actually able to solve social problems. So if there is a problem that certain people do not have access to certain goods or services or basic means, which can be produced in a financial viable manner, you can solve it through a type A social business, which is customer oriented, where you say, okay, for example, malnutrition among children in Bangladesh is one classical example of a very early example social business where the Grameen Danone is providing them healthy food. If you want to know more about type A social business, I have made a separate video on this. Then another one would be, okay, if you say the social problem is actually because certain people are not able to join the workforce and therefore have, on the one hand, maybe identity problems, they might have the problems of recognition in society, of meaning in their life, which might lead to alcoholism whatsoever. So this can actually be solved through type B social problems, employee-oriented social businesses, which try to involve those people in meaningful activity in society, which would not be able to find a job in the regular labor market, for whichever reason. Also here exists a separate video where I discuss this in more detail. And the other one would be the type E social business. I call it society-oriented or the cross-subsidization. So this business model can help to say, okay, if you have any intervention problems where you can neither interact with the target group by making them customers, nor can you interact with them by making them your employees, you could think about saying, okay, are you able to set up any kind of socially responsible business which has a profitable business model where you say, okay, there is a certain amount left over, I can expect every month 5 or 10,000 euro as a profit, and then use that amount to actually sponsor social interventions which normally would be funded by governmental funds, donations or other things. So rather than spending your time on collecting donations, you would do this. So again, there is a separate video on this. Yeah, let me now come to the last level of sustainability, economic level of sustainability. So whenever we have a problem here, we also could call it a market failure. So this is a situation where the allocation of goods and services, or sometimes also labor, is not efficient. So we have altogether a net social welfare loss because there are 2 agents in the market and they don't interact with each other. So there is less benefit. Like, let's say there is a farmer who has actually a cabbage, too much cabbage as he needs, and there is a buyer who would like to have it, but they are not coming together because of different reasons. So in that case, social business can help or be the solution. In particular, again, we can talk here about type A customer-oriented social businesses, which can bring this good with innovative business models or innovative distribution models to the customer required. Grameen Danone is again a problem example for it. Or type B employment-oriented social business is again saying, okay, if it's an economic reason that if you say, okay, there are people who are not able to make the living and they face economical problems because of this rather than the social problems I discussed before, this can again be solved by this. And then last but not least, type C, supply-oriented social businesses. are another possible way. So this here we talk about how can small-scale producers, which are not able to access the market, be involved in a manner. And there is another video about Type C social business where you can learn more about this. So, having said all this, let's have a brief look at the limitations of social business. So what are like limitations for all types of social businesses? Social business cannot counteract malpractices of existing businesses. It is impossible to, for example, counteract the environmental pollution which is existing there. It is impossible to counteract inequalities or global supply chain problems, whatever is there. So name it, there is hundreds of challenges which we have currently. And social businesses can, in best case, be kind of a spark, showing how things can be different, and it can maybe divert a handful of customers switching from one to another. But eventually, also the big businesses will have to change certain of their impacts, petrodollars, etc. Social business cannot replace the social welfare state, even though there are incredible projects going on. I know them from Nepal, I know them from Bangladesh, where in the absence of the state, social businesses are trying to provide service, and this is definitively better than no service, or it's better than even a profit-oriented hospital or school. But eventually, from all I have seen and compared so far, even that is not able to fully recover for it, because you always have the fact that certain groups are not able to access even that service. So there is a limitation in scaling it up, as well as the quality I have seen till now has never really reached the quality you can have with a really well done social welfare state, as I know it from Austria, Europe in the 1990s, maybe beginning 2000s. Social business cannot solve systemic problems. So, for example, reallocation through interest rates, which has been shown by, for example, Moneta being a problem, or a bit more general said, whatever Johann Galtung called structural violence, cannot really be approached through social business, because this is happening on a much bigger systemic levels. So a social business can, as one actor, maybe be part of a new system which counteracts. But to really bring a change here, we need a movement which is much bigger than just one organization. Also, social business cannot really solve behavioral problems. So if you think, for example, about discrimination or violence against women, so of course they can contribute to awareness campaign, in particular through Type E social business, but eventually there needs to be a shift on a very different level. Or to say it more general, social business is actually acting, and I'm coming back here now to this graphic of Hollingsworth, can only act on the lower two levels of this institutional analysis, so on organizations and output level, and can have maybe after a while, can a cluster of social businesses have some influence on the institutional sector, but at the moment the activities of social businesses is limited to these lower two areas of this model. I hope you have enjoyed the video. If you would like to know more, please visit my website or like and subscribe this channel. Thank you. Bye bye.